Hello, welcome to part two of this webinar on the failure to disclose lack of Indigenous consent or the existence of social conflicts at Canadian mines abroad. For those of you that have seen part one, I've already introduced myself. For those of you that are jumping in at part two, my name is Shinny Mai. I'm a professor emeritus at Osgoode Hall Law School in Toronto and one of the founders of the Justice and Corporate Accountability Project. Part two of this webinar, we get into the nitty gritty of how to file a complaint and what research is necessary to file such a complaint. The JCAP, Justice and Corporate Accountability Project, has filed a number of these complaints relating to Canadian companies in Latin America and one operating in Alaska. We have also advised half a dozen other NGOs on how to file complaints. At the end of this part, we'll have a short commentary by Viviana Herrera of Mining Watch Canada, one of the NGOs that we have collaborated with. Just a couple of disclaimers. First of all, the information that we provide is general and cannot be taken as specific legal advice for specific cases. You'll have to figure out which jurisdiction you need and which legislation you need to look at in order to carry out these complaints. However, we do go through how the bulk of the work can be done by non-lawyers. The second disclaimer is that if you think that I've made a mistake or have left something out, please feel free to bring it to my attention, and I will certainly consider what you have to say about it and make any changes if necessary. Finally, this is produced under a Creative Commons license, so you are free to use it and distribute it for educational purposes, but not for commercial purposes. Thank you very much, and please enjoy part two of this webinar. Bye. Okay, so there's a serious problem with corporate accountability and the way that things are structured in Canada, and that, in a way, leads into what we're doing here about the disclosure complaints. When we started looking at, through urging of Jen Moore and others, we're not the first ones to do this. I'm not saying JCAP because other environmental groups and have done some of this stuff, but there's three ways to pressure corporations directly. One is a shareholders motion, which Jen described, where if you have a shareholder or enough shareholders, they can bring a matter up to the annual general meeting and make a complaint there. I won't go into what that involves. There's direct pressure on investors, and I'm sure many of you have been involved in these campaigns against banks and other investors. And then there's a Securities Act disclosure complaint, and that's basically what I'm going to focus on now. So I won't go into those other tools at this moment. So I'm going to use Aris mining as the example here, or how to look up a few documents from Aris mining. And you can tell here that Aris has, again, one of these. They don't have an American head office, but it's a transnational corporate structure with, mines in the third world and various tax cleansing jurisdictions in between, like Panama, before it goes back up to British Columbia. Okay, so this is what is a securities commission? Well, a mining, you can have a company that's private, which means uh, you know the shareholders and anybody in this chat can incorporate your own company. And you can be the shareholder, you can be the board, and you can also be the employee. And in fact, people do this to avoid tax because you pay less tax as a corporation than you do as an individual. However, that's a little bit of a side thing. Um, but in order to raise money, a lot of junior money companies, they need to uh, put their stocks on the Toronto Stock Exchange or the New York Stock Exchange to try to get other investors to buy shares in the company. So then, with that money, they have capital to do the work that they do. So when a company is listed on a public stock exchange, there's something called the Securities Commission, and which is like a uh, investor, like consumer protection for investors. So it's like, if you have just to bring it down to groceries, if you have a quart of milk and a company is not putting a quart of milk in something that's labeled a quart of milk, you can make a complaint to, the Consumer Protection Division of your province or whatever, and say, look, this is a problem. They're saying they're selling a quart, but they're not selling a quart of milk. There's less. So it's the same kind of thing. The Securities Commission try to ensure that the mining companies are telling the truth and giving actual true information to the investors so that the investors can decide, do I want to buy this stock? Do I want to sell this stock, and the information that they have to disclose is called material information. So obviously they can't disclose every single thing. Like, we built a extra bathroom in our office. I mean, that's not the kind of things they disclose. They disclose information that impacts the mining operation, and that's what's called material information. So that's an obligation, and if they're supposed to provide that information to investors, and if investors are not getting the true information, they can make a complaint to the Securities Commission and say, investigate this. They're saying, um, they didn't disclose that there was an earthquake and their whole mine, was inoperational. I mean, so you can make a complaint to the Securities Commission. Um, you can also shareholders who lose money can also uh, file lawsuits against the mining company for failing to disclose information. Again, I won't get into that part of it, although it's a very interesting aspect. We don't have time. We're now dealing with complaints. So uh, uh, we got this idea both from academic articles and some other environmental NGOs doing this, but we thought, well, if the mining company is not disclosing that there is social conflict or that there's lack of indigenous consent or something like that, why can't we complain to the Securities Commission? And so we started doing this, and that's what these complaints are about, is that the company is not disclosing material information. And it's not material information about, whether there's a earthquake and the mine can't operate. It's material information about social conflict and about indigenous consent. Uh, Now, what does this, and that's why you're all on this call. I think that's why you're interested in this. Um, so what's the requirement for the information? It has to impact the share price, uh, or it has to be something that a reasonable, quote unquote, reasonable investor would be concerned about. Uh, the And so, that one question is if it's something that's uh, uh, very minor and an investor wouldn't care about it, it wouldn't affect the share price, then that's not material information. They don't have to report it. And so the question is, um, uh, at what point do you cross into material information? If one person is assassinated, an opponent to a mine, not by the company, but by an quote unquote unknown actor, is that material information that's going to affect the share price of the mine? If indigenous group says, no, I don't give you surface rights over the land where you say you're going to build your pipeline, is that material information that has to be disclosed? And so there's a whole debate around that. I think probably most securities commissions won't accept that that is material. They say it doesn't. But our experience, and I think that there's a growing body of evidence, is that in fact, it does affect the share price. When we disclose and that there's been assassinations or that people were shot in the back and the company didn't report it, the share price drops. And so that's an impact. Um, uh, there's studies uh, in the United States across that macro studies done by statisticians that show that social conflict does impact share price. And so this is material information that has to be disclosed. Now, whether the commission, Securities Commission, does anything about that is a totally different matter. But I think that you cross the legal threshold if you have that type of information. If you have information that this some of the indigenous people don't consent. Now, with indigenous consent, every mining company has some kind of indigenous consent. They've found somebody to consent to their mine. And sometimes it's legitimate, there's a certain group, and sometimes there's a legitimate disagreement in the community. But if there is a legitimate disagreement in the community, then, the mining company should disclose, we got the consent from this group, but not the other group. And if they haven't done that, then that's a problem. But, there's a Solaris in Ecuador. They said that, oh, we have the consent of the two indigenous groups here. They didn't say that it was just 2 out of 47. So, that is a basis for making a complaint. Um, Now, once the material information is disclosed, that's kind of it. Because this is not human rights legislation. This is a means for protecting investors. I mean, that's the vehicle that we're dealing with. So if the company says we routinely assassinate opponents of the mine or we eat babies for breakfast, it doesn't matter. Like whatever, if they disclose it, you have no basis for a complaint. So one of the things that you need to do is not only determine what it is that's the company is doing, but you have to determine what uh, they have disclosed. Okay, so I won't go into the legal part about what the disclosure requirement is and misleading um, statements. But this is where you have to research what the company has said. Okay, so what's important is you need to establish what the community perspective is, and you have to look at the company perspective. And so from that, I'm just going to take you through very quickly what it is to look in like the SEDAR and where the documents are, what it looks like. And so if you're on your computer, you can actually try to do some clicking yourself so that you can see what I'm talking about. I won't go into a great deal of detail, but it'll give you an idea of what you need to do. So yeah, as I say, the key is if the company has disclosed whatever it is that you're complaining about, then you don't have a complaint. Okay, so you know that the website is a good place to go, but the most important place is to go to SEDAR, and that's the Canadian one. There's one called Edgar in the United States, but if you're dealing with a Canadian company, you're going to be dealing with SEDAR. Okay, so you could do this on your own computer, but you go to sedarplus.ca and it'll take you to this page. And this is the official site for all the official filings of the corporation, and there's a lot of them. So there's two things that you should be aware of. First of all, you go to search SEDAR and put in the name of the company. Is this working for me? Yeah, oh, here it is. Operator. Select profiles to search in. So if I do Eris, it should, okay, you're getting a bunch of Erises here. Eris Mining Corporation. You push that, and what you'll see up here at the top ribbon, you'll see profiles and documents, discipline list. Discipline list, you know, if the company's already been disciplined, like they've done something wrong, you'll see it turn up there. Uh, so that's always something to look at. But if you push the profiles, you'll see their official, um, sorry. Okay, so then you go here, you see the Aris Mining Corporation, you push that, and okay, can everybody see the screen where it says profile details?
Yes, Sean.
Yeah.
Yes.
Great. Okay. So that has where the head office is. It tell you what now where is it? It tells you where, okay, the head office, and it'll tell you uh I'm scrolling down. You see formation details here. It'll tell you when it was incorporated and where. So here it says Canada, British Columbia, so you know it's been incorporated in British Columbia. What that means is in Canada, for the Americans, you have one securities administrator, United States Security and Exchange Commission, and you know you go there for all your information. In Canada, you have 12 individual. There's no national securities administrator. Each province has its own, and the so the place of incorporation is important because the legislation in British Columbia is what you will have to look at in terms of you know what the disclosure requirements are for a British Columbia incorporated corporation. If it was incorporated, like if the jurisdiction where formed said Ontario, then you'd have to look up Ontario legislation. All across Canada, the legislation is very similar, so you're not going to find a big variation, but that's something to be aware of that you know when you're quoting, sorry, when you're yeah, if you're quoting legislation in your document that you do refer to the right legislation. Okay, so now I've scrolled up to that page. It says documents. It says search and download documents for this profile. So if you push that, you'll see like all this, there's tons, right? There's consents for this. There's just ton, auditors consent. I know, there's just tons of documents. The documents that you want, the ones that you're actually interested in are the interim management discussion and analysis, which is a report that they put out 4 times a year, and the annual information form. And so you just put in the document type here, and you put if you put an annual information form, it'll tell you all the. I'm not going to do it now, but where is it in here? Um, Yeah, anyways, if you use these little boxes and you put in the right dates and you ask for the annual information form or the management and discussion analysis, you'll get those documents. And so you want to look them up around the dates of the issues that you're looking at to see if they've disclosed anything uh, about the issues that you're worried about. And I'm going to just open up a couple of, I'll just show you what they look like, just to look at the table of contents. Okay, this is management discussion and analysis. And this comes out 4 times a year. And uh, the this is where the company is supposed to discuss what's happening with the company, where they see the company going, and so on. And so there'll be disclosure there about any risks and issues that they're facing. And it's kind of it's in small print and it can be very long and there's financial information and all this kind of stuff. And I'm not going to go through all of this, but you'll just have to, and each one is different, like each company is different one. So you just have to mush through this. And once, don't get intimidated. Like once you do it once, you kind of get a sense of what's important and what's not, or what you're looking for in these. Um, the annual information form, okay, now I got that up comes out every year, and this has sort of more general information. And so previously somebody was asking about the corporate chart, and so here's a chart here. So these will have, it's useful to kind of get an overview. Yeah, you can find out what the director's compensation is, like just a lot of information about the company, but also including any disclosure they should have made about risks that they're facing or challenges or opposition, that kind of thing. So I just went through looking at searching through SADAR, looking at the profiles for some general information, looking at the documents and finding the uh, interim management discussion analysis annual information form. Um, they call it the MD&A. It'll have information like project updates. There'll be a section on risks, usually uh, something about, what a great sustainable project they're doing. I told you about the annual information room. In the case of Aris, they're operating in a very dangerous area where there's a lot of trafficking. They call it guerrilla activity. And they give some statements about that. And in this case, what we're looking at is whether they had made enough specific disclosure about the narco traffic activity around their mine or not. And so for that, we had to look at the annual information form and to see what they said and compare that to the information from the community. Now, this is another challenging part is if you're looking for community information about from the community, it's got to be like it has to be really strong information that can't be challenged. So something like community leaders say this or that there's a lot of opposition probably isn't strong enough. You want documentation. If people are shot, you want documentation like newspaper reports, other things. If there's community referenda, you want to know, like, where is it filed? Is it registered? Have they, what was the vote? Like anything that, these are legal documents, and so you can't kind of gloss over these kind of things. If there's community opposition, what are the community opposition? Um, and the final thing is it has to be material. And so you have to look at, what the opposition is. Is it material or not? Um, okay. Uh, Jen said that you had to get publicity, and that's the whole point. The commissions actually won't do anything. I know that there's been couple of cases where they've investigated after we made a complaint, but as far as I know, there's been no disciplinary action taken against the companies, nothing. And so the fact that the stocks go down, that investors care, is not because the commissions do anything. As I say, the commissions are generally a little reluctant and probably not very sympathetic to the types of cases that we're raising, but investors do care. And one hint I have, and this is from Mining Watch, is to go to Yahoo, go get a commercial press release service to distribute your press release, because then it gets picked up by Yahoo Finance or mining.com, like these business places where investors find out information. If you just put out a press release to your friends or sympathetic, reporters, I mean, you should do that, but investors and are obviously not going to find out about it, so nothing will happen. Um, just in terms of what I'm sorry, this has taken a bit longer than I thought it would. Um, so I think that just because it's two and it was supposed to end at two, I would say that I need another 15 minutes. And so just so that you guys can, if you want to get off, you can, or you can make your own decision about what comes up. But I'm going to wrap up here, and then we're going to hear a few words from Viviana about a non-lawyer and what it's like doing these complaints. So what can complaint do? It provides a voice for the community and puts it in a vehicle that has some kind of legitimacy in the legal process. Uh, and through this, you get investors interested, and through the business press, you might get wider uh, publicity, and you might have impact on the stock price. And the thing is, and unfortunately, I've come to this, is that, I'm never going to take down a mining company. And I don't, so, but if I'm just like a mosquito and I'm bugging them, okay, maybe that's something. And if this kind of thing bugs them, they do not like complaints to the Securities Commission because it always kind of gets press and they always have to defend themselves. So that's the thing that it can do. What it doesn't do, it does nothing for the community. There's no compensation or anything. If there's a lawsuit that I referred to earlier, investors can say, we lost so much money because you didn't tell us. And so there'll be a settlement for 13 million or 30 million or whatever for the investors that get distributed to the investors for their loss. Not a single cent goes to the community. And it doesn't compel the company to change their behavior. So all they'll do is they say, we now eat babies, and we're telling you, so now you can't sue us for eating babies. So that's, it's important to kind of realize that and decide whether it's worth your while to invest in this. Um, I've told you about these resources. Oh, I haven't put this on the chat. Okay, I will. And I'm just going to end with this uh, quote from Ian Binney again. Okay, so Viviana, why don't you talk a little bit about what it's like to your experience with doing this as a non-lawyer?
Thank you so much, Shane. Yeah, so exactly. So I was asked to speak a little bit about our experience at Money Watch Canada, drafting complaints from the perspective of an organization that we are no lawyers except for one of us, but I'm not a lawyer, so I'm happy to do that. I'm aware of time, so I'm gonna try to be as concise as possible. Maybe just to start to say that, to reaffirm what Shane and Jen have said so far, and is that, we use the complaints to securities commissions as part of a myriad umbrella of strategies that an affected community abroad can use to hold Canadian mining companies accountable for their behavior here in Canada. It's definitely not the only one, but it's part of that, myriad of strategies, and it's part of, in that sense, it's part of a larger advocacy and media strategy. Um, in terms of, sharing a very specific example, earlier this year, and probably the most recent complaint that we filed was the one filed by the Shuar Arutan people in the Ecuadorian Amazon, who filed a complaint together with Money Watch Canada and other international organizations to the British Columbia's Securities Commission. And in that complaint, we argued that the Solaris Resources, a junior mining company, failed to disclose material information to shareholders regarding its Warinza mining project, which overlaps the indigenous Shuar people's tidal territory in the Ecuadorian Amazon. Some of the main arguments that we put on the complaint was that the company, the junior mining company, hadn't disclosed the indigenous Shuar's Arutam's explicit and systematic rejection of the mining project. We also argued that the company didn't disclose the lack of indigenous consent to the project, and that it only had the support of 2 out of 47 Shuar indigenous affected communities, and how all of that could potentially threaten the project's viability. So when we started the process of drafting the complaint, it's always a very daunting job at the beginning, because this sounds as a very legal, technical document. However, something that we've learned from Jacob and Shane is that if we had the support from other organizations, and Jacob, is always an easier process. So, as is been already mentioned, one of the main sources that we use to draft complaints is the CEDAR. Here we can find official documents such as the MDA and other disclosure documents. And for us as organizations that support mining affected communities, our job is to see, um, find out what companies are saying here in Canada to its investors, and compare that to what the company is doing and saying to communities and to people on the ground. So in this case, Seidar is great because for this particular complaint, we looked into Solaris resources, what the company had been saying throughout the years in regards to its relationship with the Shuar Arutan people, in order to show how the company has failed in every single official document to disclose, to inform its investors about the multiple examples of social conflict on the ground, and the systematic rejection to the project by the communities. On the other hand, we also quoted the Shuar Rutan people's official documents. Throughout the years, they've organized regional territorial assemblies, and in every single assembly, they've put out statements rejecting mining in their territory. They've also filed a complaint to ILO, to International Labor Organization, in regards to the project. So we had plenty of legal official documents to support the Shuar Arutam's people's opposition to the project. Also, I think I would like to highlight that throughout the drafting process, we engaged with Jacob, who were, extremely helpful in providing feedback about the complaint in terms of language, in terms of framing, and always reminding us about how rigorous this process needs to be, because it needs to be well, um, uh, all the co um, all the bases needs to be there, because we cannot leave anything without being substantiated. So the complaint was filed this year. We put out a press release to accompany the submission, and we did a lot of work with media, and fortunately, it had the effect that we wanted. In a way, it was because that was part of our comms strategy, but also in a way, we got lucky because there were other factors that happened around the launch of the petition that made journalists very interested in this complaint. So on one hand, and that goes back to what Jen was mentioning earlier on, that the media strategy needs to be very strong, because at the end of the day, that's what we want. We want to publicize and make this public and make as much noise as possible. And that's only done through like a very rigorous and comms strategy. So one decision that we made was to launch the petition a few days before the biggest mining conference in the world, the annual trade show of the Prospectors and Developers Association of Canada, better known as PDAC, which happens every year in March in Toronto. So we did this because the mining company has used PDAC since 2020 to showcase the project to investors. So that was a comms decision, and it paid off, because the thing that we didn't know was that the president of Ecuador, Daniel Noboa, decided to attend the PDAC conference this year. So 3 years, I mean, 3 days after we launched the petition, we learned that the president was coming. So that generated a lot of interest in media in terms of picking up this complaint that we had just filed in Canada, in order to talk about the allegations by the Shuar Arutan people. And there were many other factors that I'm not going to get into because of sake of time. But just to say that also in terms of impact, we saw, and that was also done through with Jacob and other organizations, we were following the impact on the price of the stocks for the company. And we noticed that within like 4 days or so, the price of the stocks for Solaris resources actually fell. So there was an actual impact there. Of course, we can never attribute like 100% that it was because of the complaint, but because of everything that happened during those days, we feel that the complaint definitely had an impact on that. Also, we saw a lot of chat among investors about the complaint and the allegations. And also we had a lot of media coverage in newspapers such as the National Post. So just to end, I would like to say that it's very important from the beginning to be very clear with the communities about expectations. As Shane was saying during his presentation, we are not attempting to stop the mining project with a complaint, but what we want with the complaints is to have an official document here in Canada where potential investors who are thinking about investing into the company, when they do their due diligence, they come across these documents. And so we want to create doubts and we want to create these questions about the company, and have this in the public realm, but also for organizations and communities abroad, this can be very useful because whatever happens here in Canada in terms of media coverage is going to be translated to, for example, in this case, to Ecuador. So Ecuador, media in Ecuador picked up on what Canadian media were saying here in Canada about the complaint. So, again, so we were tackling and sort of like attacking the company's reputation both in Canada and in Ecuador. And just to say also that it's not only about filing the complaints, but it's about the noise and it's about publicizing the complaints. And that's something that we try to do, and that's something that goes in line to with what Shane and Jen were sharing with us earlier on. I think that's all, and happy to answer any questions. Thank you.